Dr. Eddie Voss did not wake up that morning expecting to commit galactic-level fraud. In fact, he barely expected to wake up at all, given the dubious life support system in his dingy space-rented apartment on the backwater moon of Crux 88. But as it turned out, his landlord had not yet sold his oxygen supply to cover gambling debts, and the universe had yet again refused to let him die in peace. Instead, Eddie found himself in the bowels of the Galactic Science and Research Database, hacking, poorly, into classified Imperial files with a software program named Definitely Not a Virus 2.0. He wasn't a hacker, not by a long shot. His actual skill set involved poking alien flora and hoping it didn't secrete neurotoxins. But when you were one, bounced paycheck away from selling your spleen on the black market, you got creative, and that's when he found it. Buried under miles of bureaucratic nonsense, imperial lunch orders, and a very unfortunate memo about the misuse of office staplers, Eddie discovered a research file labeled Project Extinction. Varian. Specimen last known. It took his brain a full 30 seconds to process what he was looking at. Holy, he muttered, rubbing his eyes. The Varians were extinct, or at least that's what the Galactic Empire had been telling everyone for the past 2 centuries. Giant, ancient, ridiculously powerful, and supposedly capable of manipulating cosmic energy. If even half the legends about them were true, a living Varian was like discovering a T-Rex that could do calculus and shoot laser beams from its eyes, and the last one was locked up on Tyrannus 12, a barren moon used exclusively for secret research and bad career decisions. Eddie grinned. He had no real long-term plans aside from don't starve, but a find like this could turn everything around. He could study it, publish papers, maybe even pay off the crippling student debt that had been following him like a bounty hunter, with attachment issues. All he had to do was bluff his way onto an Imperial research base, steal a classified creature, and avoid getting vaporized. Simple. 48 hours later, Eddie stood on the landing pad of Tyrannus 12, sweating through his questionably obtained lab coat. The Imperial scientist across from him, a stiff, humorless woman with the general vibe of a sentient clipboard, glanced at his credentials. "You're late," Eddie blinked. Yes, terribly sorry. Space traffic, meteor showers, a very aggressive pigeon." She stared at him. "Pigeon. Yes, nasty things. Vicious," he coughed. "Anyway, Dr. Edgar Vossington at your service. Here for the standard biogenetic assessment of the, lizard guy." The scientist sighed, already bored. "Fine. Follow me." Eddie did, keeping his face carefully neutral as they walked through the dull, sterile hallways of the Imperial facility. Security was surprisingly lax, possibly because no one in their right mind would willingly come here. The guards looked half asleep. The scientists were dead inside, and the only real sign of funding was the pristine coffee machine in the break room. Finally, they arrived at a reinforced observation chamber. Inside, lying on its side like an overgrown reptilian couch, was the last living Varian. Eddie barely managed to contain his giddy excitement. The thing was huge, 30 feet from snout to tail, covered in thick, midnight blue scales with glowing, golden markings that pulsed faintly. Its eyes flicked open, locking onto him with an expression of immediate and deep-rooted disdain. "Oh, wonderful," a voice rumbled directly into his head. "Another tiny flesh thing come to poke me with sharp objects. I was beginning to think the universe had forgotten about me." Eddie's brain short-circuited. You can talk?" The Varian rolled its massive eyes. "Oh no, I'm just moving my lips really fast and projecting sounds into your fragile little ear holes." "Yes, I can talk. Telepathy. Do try to keep up." Eddie opened his mouth, then closed. This was already going poorly. "I'm not here to, poke you. I'm here to check your genetic stabilization." The Varian snorted, exhaling a puff of something that sizzled against the observation glass. "Oh, well then. By all means, prod away, Dr. Useless. But I should warn you, I bite." Eddie forced out a laugh. "Ha! Classic humor. Love that. Can I call you something other than Varian specimen?" The creature studied him for a moment, then sighed. "Grog. Call me Grog. It's short for something complicated, and I don't feel like teaching you how to pronounce it." Eddie nodded. "Nice to meet you, Grog." "It is decidedly not nice to meet you." "Fair." Eddie quickly set up his equipment, pretending to scan Grog, while mostly just stalling for time. His plan, if it could be called that, was falling apart fast. He had no idea how to get Grog out of here. The base had at least 10 guards, and he had the upper body strength of a damp noodle. And then, because the universe had a sick sense of humor, he pressed one button too many. The machine in his hands let out a cheerful beep. Grog stiffened. The air crackled. And then, in a flash of golden light, every single restraint and suppression field keeping Grog contained snapped. There was a long pause. Eddie stared at the machine. Grog stared at Eddie. "Did you just undo 200 years of imperial genetic suppression?" Grog asked slowly. Eddie swallowed. "Maybe." The observation chamber exploded, sirens blared, warning lights flashed. Somewhere, a stressed-out imperial bureaucrat was screaming into a phone. And in the middle of the chaos, Grog stretched for the first time in centuries, flexing claws that crackled with cosmic energy. "Oh," Grog mused. "I like this." Eddie, covered in dust and very aware that he was now very high on the Empire's hit list, pointed toward the nearest exit. "So, how do you feel about running?" Grog grinned, showing way too many teeth. "I feel excellent about running, particularly when it involves crushing my captors beneath my mighty tail." "Oh, good," Eddie said weakly, "because here comes security." Sure enough, a squad of heavily armed guards burst through the smoke, aiming blasters directly at them. Eddie panicked. Wait, I'm a scientist. I have a research permit." "You can't just—" The lead guard pointed a rifle at his face. "Open fire," Eddie sighed. "Yeah, that checks out." Then Grog flicked his tail, and the entire security team was launched into a wall like a stack of particularly useless pancakes. Eddie stared. "Huh, this is fun." Grog stomped toward the exit. "Let's steal a ship and go make more bad decisions." Eddie had many objections to that plan. Unfortunately, his legs were already running. Eddie had always imagined his first encounter with a spaceship's cockpit to be a lot more dignified. Maybe he'd step inside confidently, push a few buttons like he knew what he was doing, and impress everyone with his sudden, inexplicable piloting skills. What actually happened was that he tripped over his own feet, slammed into the control panel, and accidentally turned on the windshield wipers. "Ah, yes," Grog said dryly from behind him. "Truly the mind of a great space pilot at work." Eddie groaned and shoved himself upright, frantically trying to figure out which of the glowing buttons actually started the ship. "Hey, in my defense, the user interface on these things is not intuitive. You are not supposed to be using the interface at all," Dr. Fumblefingers. "Well, somebody didn't plan an escape route." Grog, currently wedged into the cargo hold, like an overstuffed suitcase, snorted. "I assumed if I ever broke out of my cage, I would simply rampage across the moon until I got bored. But this is a much funnier alternative." Eddie ignored him and wildly pressed another button. The ship rumbled to life, the doors sealed. The console made a cheerful bing noise, which was immediately followed by a much less cheerful alarm. "Warning! Unauthorized launch detected. Security lockdown in 30 seconds. "Oh, fantastic," Eddie muttered. "Just what I needed. An AI with a bad attitude." "Try the big lever," Grog suggested lazily. Eddie frowned. That can't be how you fly. 15 seconds until lockdown, the AI announced. Eddie panicked and yanked the lever. The ship immediately blasted upward at maximum acceleration. His stomach did not appreciate this. Ah! Grog! Unaffected by little things like gravity, simply watched as Eddie flailed wildly against the control panel. Is this part of your escape plan, or are we just improvising at this point? What plan? Eddie wheezed, desperately trying to keep his lunch from making a return appearance. This is, oh gods, a disaster. Grog smirked. So, improvising then. Behind them, the research station was rapidly disappearing, its security turrets just barely, missing their ship as they shot wildly into the void. As far as daring escapes went, it was technically a success, assuming they didn't immediately crash into something, which was a very real possibility, because Eddie still had no idea what he was doing. "Where are we going?" he asked, clutching the console as the ship did something deeply concerning. Grog stretched lazily. Away from the screaming death squad. After that, I don't know, somewhere with snacks. This isn't a road trip, we just stole an Imperial ship. They're going to hunt us down. Yes, yes, Grog said, waving a massive claw dismissively. You're very wanted, congratulations. Now if we really want to cause some trouble, beep. A new alarm flashed on the console. Eddie paled. Oh, what now? Incoming transmission from Imperial Command. Answer immediately or be marked as hostile. Eddie froze. He turned to Grog. What do we do? Grog grinned. Oh, definitely answer it. Before Eddie could protest, Grog's massive tail slapped the console. The hologram flickered to life, revealing an Imperial officer who looked like he had eaten one too many emergency ration bars and was suffering for it. His uniform was crisp, his expression was sour, and the dark circles under his eyes suggested he had deep regrets about his career choices. This is Supervisor Gregorius Vensworth, the man said, sounding deeply exhausted. Imperial food transport. Vessel, you are not cleared for departure. Explain yourselves immediately. Eddie's brain short-circuited. Food transport? We stole a food? Grog ignored him. Ah, Greg, buddy, good to see you. It's been so long. Vensworth squinted. Do I know you? You should, Grog said smoothly. I am your #1 supplier of, highly classified meats, Eddie choked. Vensworth groaned. Please tell me this is not about the special cargo from last month. I told logistics to handle that mess internally. Oh, right, that mess. Grog nodded solemnly. Tragic. So tragic. But, listen, Greg, pal, there's been a change of plans. High Command wants us rerouted. Immediate. Priority. Top secret stuff. Vensworth pinched the bridge of his nose. Of course they do. Of course they would send this message through a cargo ship instead of the proper channels. High Command is very busy, Greg, Grog said, voice heavy with fake sympathy. You know how it is. Vensworth exhaled slowly. Fine. What's the new destination? Grog glanced at Eddie. Where are we going? Eddie was still too busy trying not to pass out from anxiety. Grog sighed. Greg, my guy, we're heading to... He squinted at the nearest star map. The Karen system. Yeah, Karen 5. Urgent. Vensworth frowned. We don't have a Karen system. Grog grinned. Exactly. Top secret. Vensworth made a strangled noise. You know what? I don't care. Just get off my screen. I have enough problems today. The transmission cut. There was a long, stunned silence. Eddie turned to Grog. Did you just lie to an Imperial officer so hard that he gave up? Grog smirked. I have had 2 centuries to practice. Eddie opened his mouth, then closed it. I don't know if I should be terrified or impressed. Why not both? Before Eddie could respond, the ship shuddered violently. The comms crackled again, this time with a much less friendly voice. Unauthorized transport. This is Imperial Pursuit Unit. You are ordered to... Eddie slammed the controls. The ship jumped to light speed. The pursuing fleet vanished behind them. He collapsed against the seat. Heart-pounding. "Ha ha!" Grog said, tail thumping the cargo hold floor. "Nice work, Dr. Disaster," Eddie groaned. "I hate this." "Then you'll really hate what happens next," Grog said, grinning. Eddie sat up. "What do you mean?" Grog stretched. "Well, you did just broadcast your face across an Imperial network. And since I assume you don't want to get atomized, that means we're going to need allies." Eddie's stomach dropped. "Allies?" "Yup. And I know just the person." There was a pause. Eddie narrowed his eyes. "This isn't another one of your terrible ideas, is it?" Grog grinned. "Oh, it definitely is." And that was how Eddie found himself speeding toward a rebel hideout in a stolen food transport with a 30-foot talking space lizard, while the Galactic Empire decided he was now enemy number one. He really should have stayed in bed. Eddie had always imagined his first encounter with a rebel hideout to be filled with hushed voices, dim lighting, and a general air of dramatic secrecy. Maybe there would be some kind of elaborate password system, or a grizzled old leader who would stare at him with deep wisdom and say something profound like, "You have the heart of a warrior, but the mind of a coward." Instead, the hideout was in the back room of a space bar called the Rusty Plasma. The bouncer didn't even look up as Grog stomped through the entrance, and the so-called rebellion appeared to be arguing over a game of space poker. Eddie felt his soul leaving his body. This is the rebellion," he whispered to Grog. "I was expecting, I don't know, something more intimidating." Grog surveyed the room, tail swishing idly. "Oh, don't worry, they are intimidating, mostly because they have the combined intelligence of a malfunctioning toaster." Across the room, a woman in a scuffed leather jacket slammed her cards on the table and pointed aggressively at a bearded man across from her. "I swear on my smuggler's license, Flip, if you're cheating again, I'm throwing you out the airlock." "I would never," Flip said, visibly tucking a card into his sleeve. The woman grabbed a blaster. Eddie flinched. "Okay, so we're meeting with actual criminals." "Criminals?" Grog scoffed. No, they're heroes now. Very important distinction." Eddie groaned. "I hate this. I hate all of this." Before he could backpedal out the door, the woman noticed them. She immediately tensed, eyes narrowing. "Who the hell are you?" Grog stomped forward like he owned the place. "Karen, you're looking angry today." Karen, the woman with the blaster, tilted her head. "Grog?" Grog grinned. "The one and only." Karen crossed her arms. "You're supposed to be dead." "Surprise?" Grog spread his claws dramatically. "I got better." Her eyes flicked to Eddie. "And who is this?" "Oh, that's Eddie," Grog said with a wave of his massive tail. "He's mostly useless, but he did technically free me from the Empire's space prison, so now we're accidental terrorists." Eddie choked. "Don't say it like that." Karen raised an eyebrow. "So, let me get this straight. You," she pointed at Grog, "escaped from an Imperial black site, dragged this poor sap along for the ride, and now you're here because—" "We need a place to hide," Eddie admitted. "Because the Empire, very unhappy with us right now." Karen studied him for a long moment. You're serious? Dead serious." She turned to Grog. "And you brought him here?" "Oh, yes," Grog said, grinning. "And you're going to help us." Karen exhaled slowly. "Grog, buddy, friend, I like you. But I don't help people unless there's money involved." Grog flicked his tail. "Fine, there's money involved." Eddie turned to him in horror. "What? We don't have money." Karen smirked. "Then you owe me." Eddie paled. "Oh, that's so much worse." Karen ignored him. "All right, hypothetically, if I were to help, what's the grand plan? Are we smuggling you off the radar? Laying low? What's the angle here?" Eddie hesitated. Well, we're starting." "A revolution," Grog said. Karen stared. "What?" Eddie grabbed his own face in horror. "What?" Grog stretched his claws. "Oh, come on. It's the only logical move." "No, it is not," Eddie sputtered. "You're just making things up as you go." "Yes," Grog said, And it's working. Karen looked between them. You do realize that the rebellion barely exists, right? We've got like 5 ships, a broken comm system, and a fleet of unpaid space weirdos. Sounds like a perfect foundation to me, Grog said. I mean, have you seen the Empire? The entire thing is run by middle managers who haven't updated their war strategies since the last solar cycle. We're already causing them problems just by existing. Karen sighed and rubbed her temples. You absolute idiots, Eddie groaned. Finally, someone gets it. But then Karen grinned. I love it, Eddie froze. Wait, no, too late. The poker players at the table had overheard. Are we talking real revolution? One of them said. Like actual revolution, another asked. Grog nodded solemnly. Oh yes, real revolution. The full package. Dramatic speeches. Heroic moments. An unnecessary number of explosions. Eddie frantically waved his hands. We do not have the resources for a revolution. Grog ignored him. Think about it. What do you hate most about the Empire? The taxes, Flip blurted. The constant paperwork, Karen muttered. The way they never refill the cafeteria vending machines, someone from the back grumbled. Eddie massaged his temples. I cannot believe this is happening. Karen cracked her knuckles. All right, fine. Let's say I do back this revolution. Where do we start? Grog's tail thumped excitedly. We hit the Empire where it hurts. Eddie sighed. And where's that? Karen smirked. KAC-47. Eddie frowned. What's KAC-47? Karen leaned forward. The biggest Imperial supply station in this sector. They store fuel, weapons, medical supplies. Hell, everything they need to keep running. Eddie groaned. And let me guess. You want to steal? Grog grinned. Of course we do, Karen stood. All right, boys, we're stealing an Imperial station. The rebels cheered. Eddie buried his face in his hands. This was not how science worked. The plan to steal KAC-47, like most plans involving Eddie, Grog, and an ever-growing collection of reckless space weirdos, was less of a plan and more of a vague idea with an excessive number of explosions involved. We need stealth. Eddie had insisted. We need chaos. Grog had countered. We need both, Karen had decided, because she was the only competent adult in the room, which was how Eddie now found himself crouched behind a stack of Imperial supply crates, gripping a stolen blaster while everything around him devolved into absolute disaster. This is fine, he whispered. Everything's fine. It was not fine. The original idea had been simple. Sneak onto KAC-47, disguised as Imperial inspectors, bypass security, hijack the station's core systems, and waltz out with an entire warehouse's worth of supplies. Easy. Unfortunately, their cover had lasted approximately 45 seconds before Grog got bored, flipped a security droid upside down, and declared, I am the new inspection protocol. All must kneel before my superior lizard authority. Now the entire station was in full lockdown. Sirens blared, guards ran in every direction. Explosions, which had not been part of the original plan, rocked the hallways as Karen's team definitely overdid it on the distraction front. Eddie, breathing heavily, activated his communicator. Why is everything on fire? Karen's voice crackled through. Because Flip found the grenade storage. I told him not to touch anything. Well, he didn't listen, did he? Ugh. Eddie peeked around the crate. The hangar was crawling with guards, most of them shouting into comms or shooting wildly at anything that moved. Okay, where's Grog? A shadow fell over him. He turned around just in time to see Grog burst through a wall like an angry spacefaring Kool-Aid man. Hello, minions! Grog bellowed. I have come to liberate you from your boring government jobs. Eddie threw up his hands. What happened to stealth? Oh, please, Grog scoffed. Like any of these idiots could stop me. As if to prove his point, a security officer aimed a blaster at him and shouted, Stand down! Grog promptly picked up a nearby food crate and chucked it at the man. The officer screamed as he was flattened under 50 pounds of freeze-dried space rations. "I love this plan," Grog said happily. Eddie was about to yell at him when Karen sprinted into view, firing behind her as a squad of Imperial troopers chased her. "Eddie, move your science-loving ass! We gotta go!" "Where's Flip? Where's the rest of the crew?" Eddie shouted, already running beside her as they bolted toward the control room. "Flip is probably still setting things on fire, and the others are securing the loading docks," Karen said. "But we've got a problem," Eddie groaned. "Of course we do. What now?" Karen skidded to a stop at a security terminal and slapped a data pad onto the console. "The Empire knows we're here, and they're sending reinforcements." A holoscreen flickered to life, displaying a very large, very angry-looking fleet of Imperial warships speeding toward them. Eddie paled. "Oh, come on. We haven't even stolen anything yet." "Well, we did technically steal the station itself," Grog said, "and also its entire stockpile of munitions and, medical supplies. Very thoughtful." "This is bad," Eddie said. "This is so bad." "It's fine," Karen said, pulling up schematics. "We just need to get out before they show up." Eddie frowned. "And how exactly do we do that? It's not like this station has an emergency escape button." Karen grinned. "Oh, you sweet, naive scientist. It absolutely does." She pulled a lever. A deep clunk echoed through the station. The holoscreen updated, showing that every single cargo ship in the station's docking bay had just been activated for emergency launch. Eddie's eyes widened. You just launched the entire supply fleet." "Yep," Karen said, popping her gum. "Every last one of them, fully automated, no pilots required. And guess who just set them all on a direct course away from the Empire?" Eddie's jaw dropped. "You brilliant lunatic," Karen winked. "I know." The station rumbled again, this time more violently. "Oh, that doesn't sound good," Eddie muttered. Karen checked the console and swore. "The Empire's ships are way too close. They're already trying to override the system." Grog, still grinning, cracked his claws. "Oh, don't worry, I'll handle this." Before Eddie could ask what that meant, Grog stomped over to the main reactor terminal, reached out and ripped the entire control panel out of the wall. The station's lights flickered, the alarms glitched, and then, with an almost pitiful groan, KC-47 completely shut down, Eddie screamed. "Why would you do that?" Grog flexed. "Big lizard energy. You shut off the entire station while we're still inside it." "Yes," Grog said, "and so did the Empire's fleet." Eddie's brain stuttered. He turned back to the holoscreen. Sure enough, every single Imperial warship in the vicinity had completely lost power. Karen whistled. "Huh, he actually did handle it." Eddie dragged a hand down his face. "I hate how effective he is," Grog smirked. "It's my best quality." A new alert flashed across the holoscreen. "Warning! Station in freefall. Collision imminent," Eddie groaned. "Oh, of course." Karen grabbed his arm. "No time to panic, genius. We've got a ship to catch." They sprinted toward the loading dock, where the remaining rebel ships were already firing up their engines. Flip, covered in soot and looking entirely too excited, waved them down from the ramp of the last vessel. "Hurry up," he shouted. "We've got about 30 seconds before this station eats planetary dirt." Eddie barely managed to jump onto the ramp before the ship took off. Behind them, KAC-47, now an enormous, powerless metal brick, drifted helplessly downward, taking dozens of Imperial warships with it. Karen crossed her arms. "So, we just took down an entire Imperial stronghold. And their fleet," Flip added cheerfully. Eddie slumped onto the floor. "We're so dead." Grog, watching the chaos unfold with a pleased expression, chuckled. "Oh no, my dear Dr. Disaster." He turned toward the cockpit and grinned. "We're just getting started."